Whew. Hello, everyone. What a day so far for me. That's about right. Yeah, it's been busy. There's a really fast turnaround time between Tuesday night and Wednesday early afternoon. And, I've just been running around trying to get a whole bunch of stuff done. Actually, I should use my non-reflective glasses for this. These are older, but they have some kind of thing on them that doesn't reflect the light as much. There's not as much glare. But I don't wear them since they're older. They're like a little bit weaker than the newer prescription I got with these. They still work, but these are also lighter. These are like metal frame, and after wearing these ones, if I try to wear these too long, they hurt. It's amazing how just like a little bit of extra weight in metal can like be so affecting. So anyway, since the holiday is coming up, I'm just trying to get a whole bunch of work done so that I can hopefully take the weekend mostly off and do a little bit of catching up on shit that I've been letting slide way too long. For those of you who know me from Nexus, you know that I'm an elder, and there's stuff that I've been putting on the back burner so I could focus on this, as well as other work for probably a few weeks. In some cases, some people have been waiting to hear back from me, which is frustrating. But sometimes in life, you know, I remember a long time ago, when I first began working with a life coach, he said, well, what he did, and a thing I like to do with clients as well, because I think this matters greatly if you want to get to know someone. And I don't just do it with coaching clients, I've done it in my job as a website designer, even, about the person and their business. He does a values assessment, basically. And back then, because things were so much struggle, I was yearning just for some more peace. And so all the values I was listing out, not only were they kind of related around that, but they also were stuff I felt like maybe I should be saying, because at the time online, like, so many websites were coming out about, like, there was Zen Habits by Leo Babauta. A lot of people were coming out with, you know, minimalism, tranquility, serenity, you know, just stuff focusing on these things because, you know, they recognize that in our modern life, especially post 9/11, where there's an anxiety around that in the early 2000s, and early and mid 2000s, and it affected people for a few years because, like, we were at war for those few years, and, you know, in the mid 2000s you had Blackberries and Palm devices, and in 2006, I think it was the iPhone. The original iPhone came out on AT&T. I was working at Verizon at the time. And, you know, so now you're more connected. Social media was coming out, you know, MySpace, but then, like, Facebook in the late 2000s. People were constantly connected, being bombarded by information, overloaded, stressed, so on and so forth. So you had this big movement of people writing about, you know, either because the internet was now a thing and it was becoming easy to get in and start your own business online, thanks to technology such as WordPress to design websites and things like that. You had people who were advocating for a more minimal lifestyle. You had people, thanks to, like, the 4-hour work week, who were traveling to other countries and they were making American dollars online. But, like, even if you only made, let's say, $2,000 a month, or even $1,500 a month. I mean, $1,500 a month is only $18,000 a year, but you're living like a king in like Thailand, for example, on 18 grand a year. And it allowed people the freedom and the leeway to build up a business online. And so you had these like communities of expats, not even really expats, but just people who were digital nomads, who were, starting up. So there was this big thing about, getting out of the rat race, kind of embracing minimalism and all this other stuff. And so when I did this value exercise, like I'm just saying all these things because like I felt like that's what I should want because I was into this movement at the time, and I was into it because I not that I knew it at the time, but freedom is like my number one value, period. And that was what I was really looking for, but I wanted the feeling that freedom would give me, which is tranquility, peace, feeling like I was in control of myself and my own destiny. I really fucking hate going into an office, aside from the fact that like it's not my stuff. I have to be somewhere foreign and around people who I wouldn't even associate with if not for the fact that I had to go to this job. It was on their schedule. Even when I was a contractor, I still had to work generally normal hours. And for a while there, it was working out of the main office, and it was like, we expect you to be here at like 8:30, and you leave at 5. And it's just like, granted, it was a super easy job, so I could deal with it for a while because I just was screwing around basically all day, and then at night I was working on my side hustle, like getting websites designed and starting up business and all that kind of stuff. Why am I saying all this? I'm saying all this because in the video on my website, I lay out, it's like an intro video, about my background and what I do with clients and all that. And I talked about actually working with clients. And I say at a certain point, we need to figure out what's holding you back, and we need to address that first. And then I said a note, I was like, I would ask what you want out of life, but the thing is, you find that when you clear up the unfinished business that's holding you back, and I use that term specifically because my mentor is going with that as a brand, and she's actually coming out with a book to do this work that I will be receiving an advanced copy of and likely start to use that to work with clients as well. And I think it's a good term for this. You find once you clear up that shit that you don't want the same things that you thought you wanted. So once I cleared up my shit, I realized, oh, these aren't actually my values even. I want these feelings, but like tranquility is not even, I mean, it's like a value, but it's kind of not. I was just saying like a bunch of buzzwords for what I kind of wanted in life, as opposed to like what I truly valued, which would be things like freedom. I think love is kind of a, who doesn't value and want love? And so like we all kind of do, so I won't say that, but I would say that like a relationship is a super high priority and value for me. Romantic. Family matters too, of course, but and so man, where was I going with all this? I hate that when I just start talking and it's like, the fuck. I think I was talking about just being really busy and stressed and valuing peace and all that kind of stuff back in the day, and realizing that stuff has changed. And so I think what I really want to say about it is, you may be feeling the same way as I used to. And it's still important to do values kind of upfront to kind of get a sense of a person. And if for nothing else, even if it's not the real values like what I had, it could be just signs as far as what they're looking for in their life. But values can change over time. And in some cases, you don't even really know what your real values are until you kind of clear yourself up. And, oh, I remember how to bring this back around. Back at that time, I was, one of the words I threw out there in addition to serenity and tranquility was balance. You know, because I did feel stressed and I didn't feel like things were, like in alignment in my life, like that I was allotting the right time for certain things. I was doing too much over here, not enough over there, etc. And I think balance is something worth striving for to a certain extent, as long as you weight things appropriately. Like you if you're an athlete, you should be working out quite a bit more than the average person. But if you are just getting in like an hour of exercise, but you're putting in 8 hours of work, it doesn't mean you're imbalanced between your physical health and your job, you know, or your career or whatever. That would be kind of imbalanced because that's the appropriate amount of exercise. If you have no time for exercise because you're working all the time, then that would be imbalanced. But even then, I remember back then wanting this balance and this serenity so bad, and I've evolved now to realize that there's a time for imbalance. There's a time to grind. There's a time to go all in on stuff. And it shouldn't be because you're procrastinating, and it shouldn't be because you are afraid, and procrastination has roots in fear. It's a big topic that I'm not actually looking to get into on this stream. But maybe I will in the future, once I have prepared and remember a little bit more. Although I could kind of, you know, throw out a few things here or there right now. But, you know, I remember wanting this so bad, and actually now it's like, no, it's okay that I'm imbalanced right now. It's okay that I'm busting my ass right now getting this going. It's okay that I'm putting other stuff aside. My calendar, I was just sharing my calendar with someone today and showing them how it's set up, and I color coordinate it for a few reasons. Number one, by breaking all the different things I do up into different calendars, I can use a little bit of automation. So I have like an online call scheduler, and I have a calendar that's actually hidden, and I can block off time right in the calendar, and it will block it off on the call scheduler without me logging into the call scheduler, because I always have my calendar up, and that's super useful. And there are times when I have like recurring meetings, and anything that's not just on this like blocked off calendar, but anything that's on my business meetings and stuff automatically sets my phone into do not disturb mode, so that as a meeting comes up, I'm on with a client or I'm on streaming, that should be turned off. In fact, I gotta check on the streaming. I'm not sure if that's set up yet, but I know whenever I talk to a client, it's like, boom, that gets silenced. And also, at a glance, I can see what kind of work is coming up and what I'm gonna be doing just by the color, because I know any of my work tasks are different shades of green. If it's, you know, it's a light green, it means I'm doing some kind of like design or work like that. A dark green is kind of like tasks, emails, stuff like that. But in general, it's like, okay, I'm working. Shades of blue are personal stuff. So it's like a light blue would be me just having to, I don't know, like if I have to, if I was going to go meet up with a friend somewhere, that would probably be in a shade of blue. If I had to take some time to drive somewhere to do something, that one's a little hairy because yellow is errands. So if I'm gotta go buy groceries, that would be in yellow. If I'm going and getting a haircut, that would be in yellow. Purple and stuff like that is different shades are for gaming, specifically Nexus. Typically, but also other games. And so anyway, I can see my calendar and I can see how balanced or imbalanced it is. And right now I see like no blue. The only blue I see is taking care of this guy over here. And the because I feel strongly that he should get like an hour of time each day for exercise. Today it was a little squished. Instead of taking him on a walk and playing fetch with him out at a field, we just went in the backyard and played with the flirt pole. And so it's kind of like real fast, but still burns his energy out. But that's okay. That's okay because I know this weekend I'm working hard right now to clear up some space, and next week again there's not a whole lot of blue, but I see lots of different colors, and I know that I'm relatively balanced. And even though maybe my own personal tasks or things are kind of not being taken care of as much, like I'm not focused on myself and doing work on myself or the things I like personally care about, like maybe practicing drums, for example, it still is the case that it's okay. It's okay to be imbalanced sometimes, as long as you have a reason. And a really good one would be getting this stream and business going. And I actually got some, not that I'm going to get into it, but really good news about that, that I should be able to put in a lot of focus into this, and hopefully, put in a lot of effort into growing it over the next 2 months or so, actually. So this is going to be great. Going to be doing a lot of social media, a lot of advertising and stuff like that. So we'll see how it goes. So, discussion about balance and values and everything off to the side. What we did last night was we went on Reddit and kind of looked at the Trauma Toolbox subreddit, and I think rather than try to jump into something new, especially because tomorrow is Turkey Day and I'm not going to be streaming tomorrow night because I'm just not. And none of you should be watching me on Thanksgiving either. You should be spending it with loved ones, and if you really need to watch something, there's past streams to rewatch, or whatever. Play video games. Do whatever the fuck you need to do. Don't be like focusing on trauma and shit. Come back to that another time. You might see me streaming other stuff, like I might stream MMM again on Saturday night. I might play some other games and stuff between now and then. But this is going to be the last one of these official streams for the week. So I figure, you know what? I thought the format last night worked pretty well. Gave me some real things to talk about, just kind of off the cuff. And next week, I think I might keep working this kind of thing in. I think I might dive into some books that I think are really good that people might be interested in. But we'll figure. I'm gonna figure that out over the next few days about exactly what I want to do and prepare for it and all that kind of shit. So let's swap the camera over. And another thing I'm going to do to work on my stream is make it so that I can take the streaming software and move it over here, and then take what I'm looking at and move it here. And that way I'm not looking to the side to look at Reddit. I'm going to refresh this real fast. And some of these things we looked at, they're a little bit light gray. Let's take a look at this top one, see where it takes us. Tips for differentiating a trauma reaction from anxiety. Tilder. How do you identify anxiety versus a reaction to trigger trauma? Once you accomplish that, what do you do to help bring yourself out of a panic-triggered, activated state? Please don't suggest the 5 senses grounding technique. It doesn't work for me. I had a session with my therapist today, and I was complaining about how my toolkit doesn't work like my friends, and how it was so frustrating to see logic work as a coping mechanism for my friends with GAD. I don't get to have a dialogue to talk myself down from the edge. It's a snap of the fingers, and I'm struggling not to disassociate in certain situations. My therapist told me that the reason the toolkit I'm using isn't working is because the basis for my anxiety is trauma-based. Basically, it boiled down to I need to have more compassion for myself when I'm triggered, instead of trying to work myself, let's say, through it. like I would in other situations. My problem is I can't tell the difference until nothing works and I want to lock myself in another room and cry/disassociate. How am I supposed to have more compassion for myself when I can't tell when I'm triggered, what exactly triggered me, or even what has been triggered? I would have asked my therapist in session, but I didn't realize that was my issue until my drive home. So like the title says, how do I differentiate between anxiety and a trauma reaction? What tools, besides the 5 senses grounding technique, do you use to calm down? Okay, so let's see what people say in response first. For me, it has been about having a better understanding of what kinds of things Thanos snap me into a reactionary state. For instance, being talked down to is something that can knock me off balance because when I was little I was treated like I had a cognitive disability when I was actually disassociating all the time. Trust that I'm now in a position where I'm safe from abuse and better able to articulate my needs and advocate for myself. Knowing up front what may touch a tender spot within me allows me to have more awareness when something sensitive within me was touched. So that's a great point. Just being self-aware is a good place to start. If I do have a reaction, I try and keep the word resilience in mind. Resilience to me means that I can see when I am emotionally or spiritually impacted and give myself the grace to say, oof, that was really rough, it's okay, you're good. So that I can move past it and hopefully avoid getting sucked into a toxic spiral shame. I've also embraced the words, fuck you. Let's see where this is going. I have had a lot of anger built up in me that I was ashamed about as well, and expressing that anger was a whole period of my life that I'm grateful I went through. It wasn't easy, but literally nothing worth doing is. I'm not sure I totally understand where they're going with that. Throw away Steve, so maybe a he. Really wish you the best. This stuff takes time, but writing it out helped me. Everything is far from perfect, but I wanted to share what has helped me. All right, let's just read the next one. I personally would just use trauma coping tools and then use anxiety coping tools if the trauma tools don't work, instead of trying to figure out which is which. Firstly, I don't think that behavior can fit into neat boxes of trauma versus anxiety because anxiety itself can be part of a trauma response. Now, I remember this A1C0BB person responding to another thing the other night, and I can't remember if I liked their response or not, but so far, this is what I was first thinking of when I read this. I was like, I don't want to say who cares, but is it really that important? Like, oh, this is anxiety versus this is trauma. But I mean, there's a lot of overlap there, where there can be, let's say. Honestly, I'm not very good at calming down from trauma reactions, but I find distraction, different from avoidance, to be helpful. I think I was upset at them because I was like, distraction is not the way to go. Because I remember seeing someone talk about distracting themselves last night, and I was like, I don't want to do that. And instead focus in the moment. However, my main issues are that I will ruminate or fixate on traumatic memories. I think even trying to differentiate between anxiety and trauma responses is, in a way, intellectualizing instead of dealing with the emotion. I'm going to read that line again. I think even trying to differentiate between anxiety and trauma responses is, in a way, intellectualizing instead of dealing with the emotion. Even if you don't know what triggered you, you can still have compassion for yourself by validating your own emotions and validating things as responses to trauma. With regard to figuring out what triggers you, I also really struggle with this. I found that journaling can help me figure it out, and I've spoken about the importance of this last night and other days. Also, talking about experiences with someone else, i.e. your therapist, can be good because what triggered you may be more clear to him. This helps. Okay. All right. So, to be fair, a lot of people will say that anxiety and depression are two sides of the same coin, and I would agree with that. And while not only the case, that stuff can come from trauma. I don't want to say it's always trauma related, because you might not have experienced trauma, or even if you did, it might be separate. Where if you're doing something in life that you shouldn't be doing, and by shouldn't I mean, let's say your self, your subconscious self, your not ego doesn't like or agree with, then you're going to start going down the path of depression. So for example, if you really wanted to be an artist, but you convinced yourself, no, artists don't make money. My dad really wanted me to be a doctor, so I'm going to go to medical school, and you're now a few years into medical school, and you're depressed. You're not working on art. You are just studying about shit you don't care about. You're probably going to be depressed. Doesn't mean that you were traumatized, right? So what the therapist is saying here can totally be reasonable, in the sense that the friends could be just doing things like going to medical school when they should be artists. Or, and I don't want to even make it that black and white. The problem about medical school is it's so intense. But creative people need to get their creativity out for their mental health. Like, it is a requirement. You know, like, I don't play drums nearly as regularly as I'd like to right now, but there are times when I need drum therapy, basically. And some people need painting therapy, or writing creative story therapy. It is therapeutic for creative people. People specifically, often high in openness, trait openness in the Big Five personality test scale. Or decently high, let's say. You don't have to be super, like, out there. But anyway, so point being is the friends could just have anxiety because they're doing something they don't want to do. Maybe they just are struggling with whatever they have to do day to day. For some, maybe they're just going through a hard time in their relationship. Doesn't mean trauma is necessarily involved. For this person, trauma is involved. So as opposed to just like, well, the anxiety of the situation is kind of bothering me because I want to be in this relationship, but we're fighting right now, right? And that's, that could be traumatic, but we would just call that. We probably wouldn't say that. Let's say, I'm not saying it doesn't qualify for some people depending on their past experiences, but it's likely not the case where you fighting with your spouse is going to qualify as like real trauma that's going to haunt you going forward. Hopefully the fight is not that bad that it does. Maybe it's just you're arguing about finances. In this person's case, they are this anxiety is stemming from them really being like triggered by their trauma. It really, again, I don't think it really matters. I think them trying to separate this is like, okay, so what they're really trying to ask is, when should I do a certain technique and when should I do something else? Again, the problem that I think just in general the approach here is a little off, and I don't know what they're doing with their therapist. However, the therapist is not wrong in the sense they need to have more compassion for themselves. Be like, okay, you went through this. You are going to be triggered. But again, this whole like subreddit and the approaches everyone are talking about are like, okay, let's just focus on ways to cope. It's like this person should not be like coping for the next, I don't know, 50 fucking years of their life with this. And they don't have to. They don't have to. That's the most frustrating thing about this. It's like we act like trauma Once you've been traumatized, it just is there for the rest of your life. The memories might be there for the rest of your life, but the trauma doesn't have to be there for the rest of your life. And, you know, this person's talking about, like, wanting to lock themselves in another room and cry and disassociate. I mean, I just feel like, I don't understand why, if this person has been in therapy for more than 2 months, why there's not progress on this. I mean, maybe I'm just overly optimistic, but I don't, and I'm not saying that it would be solved. You know, for as much trauma as there is, then that expands the time frame because you have to sort through it all. But the approach I would take here, if you're finding yourself in a situation where you're getting triggered by your trauma and just like shutting the fuck down, right? The first, disassociating, what exactly is disassociating? Good question. So disassociating is like when you literally detach from yourself. Hey, what's going on? What we are doing is talking about trauma in general, and we're looking at Reddit right now to kind of look at people dealing with this and figuring out tips and stuff like that, and just kind of talking about trauma. If you want to ask some questions, you're more than welcome to. So disassociating, like, it is essentially when you close off from what you are experiencing and like detach from yourself. Because like you, like let's say the outside you is going through something that like the inside you can't handle. And I will give you an example of this. Let me make sure that I keep this anonymous. Someone I knew would disassociate as a way to get through their abusive childhood. Basically, like, what was happening was so bad that they had to like just shut down and go inside to like a safe place, and so the outside world was like happening to them, but they cut off from that and were just kind of like inside themselves. But that does mean that you are shut down from the outside world, right? And you can see this, like, if you know someone who has gone through trauma, or you've ever been kind of triggered before, you just kind of, you know, it's almost like a robot being powered off. Like you just have to try to find this safe space inside, basically. And it's as if you and what's happening to you is like a different person, to the point that you are disassociated from what's going on. This person, because they were pretty decent at that from growing up, when something happened later in life to them where someone was putting them in a position that they didn't want to be in, that involved, like, they didn't want to be intimate with someone else. They felt pressured into it, and so they just shut down and like let it happen. And so it was a struggle for them too, because, you know, it's not like they necessarily said no, but they didn't want it, but they just shut down and they disassociated, right? So in this person's case, right, they're saying that's kind of the same thing, is the trauma is coming back and it's overwhelming them, and so they just want to detach from themselves because they can't deal with what is happening. Again, the ultimate answer to this is they're going to have to start to actually work through this. I hate to keep repeating that as like a solution every time. I'm not saying management techniques don't work, but a more proper way of doing it, and going back to what the other person said here about figuring out the things that, I think maybe it was here that said, figure out what triggers you. I can't remember if it was this first or the second comment, and it doesn't really matter. First off, figuring that out and kind of journaling around it and examining it ahead of time is hopefully going to give you some insights about some of the things you could do in the moment, because these people are, like this person was asking about grounding techniques, and it's like, how do I just push that away and like focus on something else to get myself back and not let myself get pulled down into crying or detaching, dissociating, anything like that? The answer here is to be a little bit preemptive. The answer is to, as far as managing it when these things come up, if you specifically, this person has to know what their trauma is at this point. There are times when you might have gone through a bunch of things and something kind of hits you, and you almost kind of, it's not that you don't know why you're being triggered, but it's kind of like a squiggly line to connect it to something that happened to you. It's not exactly like a straight line. But this person, this seems like almost like a regular or common occurrence, to the point that it's like, I need like a strategy for this. So they probably know what it is. They should probably be journaling about this, looking at it and examining it and going, what are the situations that do this to me? And then asking themselves the questions of truly what would make it okay to get through this. I know this almost sounds like a dumb answer. You know, it's like, what do you mean? You're just gonna like leave it up to them? But the thing is, what they were kind of talking about is like, well, like, instead of disassociating, the suggestion here, or what they were kind of looking for, is like, well, kind of like reattach to your body. Don't let that happen, and just kind of focus on the things that your senses can like pick up and kind of bring you back into the present. Really, what maybe needs to be done here a little bit more is, this is where kind of having some like preemptive things that you pre-plan things to tell yourself. Like this actually goes into like a bit of a therapeutic model, if I'm being really honest, which I've kind of railed against before, but I have said that these things have their place and their time and their uses. And this is actually when it's a good time to use that, is to kind of examine this and go, what are the things I can tell myself to combat the feelings? And what they want to do is kind of name the fears or the things that are shutting them down. Like, not just have it be a vague feeling. Like, no, what specifically is it? It is that I feel like this because of that. You know, it's like I feel disempowered because I had control taken from me in the past, right? Okay, what would you need to tell yourself to get through that situation if you're starting to feel that way? This situation's not like that. I am not having my power taken from me. I'm here in a room, and while this person might be overbearing, it doesn't mean that the same traumatic event is happening in the past. I am just, it is just reminding me of that, but that's not what's happening, and I can stay in control in this moment, and I am in control in this moment. Things like that. I really can't emphasize enough the importance of deep breaths whenever you are struggling with some kind of response or reaction. Again, what happens is, it's like a cascade. As soon as you start to get anxious, as soon as you start to get triggered, something like that, your prefrontal cortex shuts down and thinking goes offline, basically. That's like the first thing to shut down, because the resources need to be redirected to the other parts of your body for fight or flight, basically, or freeze. But we're going to just call it fight or flight, from here on out. Your body gets flooded with adrenaline. Your heart rate gets up so that you're ready to engage your muscles to fight or run away. It's not a time to be sitting there and like thinking through complex problems. But the problem is, when that gets turned off, you can't think logically to kind of combat the situation that's going on. When you start taking deep breaths, you begin to reverse all that. You engage your parasympathetic nervous system. You calm your heart rate down so it's no longer in your chest, right? You're bringing yourself back, and you are redirecting the resources of your body back up to the prefrontal cortex again, right? So truly, if you notice yourself even beginning, because it is a cascade, it's like it's not like you just immediately fall flat. It does one of these. It snowballs or avalanches, really, as it starts to happen. So if you can catch yourself at the beginning, before you fall, then you can go, okay, hold on, this is happening. I need to just take a breath here. And like, who gives a fuck what anyone else or anything else going on? You know, you can say, you know, hold on, I just need a moment. Who's gonna tell you no? You can't have a moment. Okay. This is happening. I started to feel this way. I know why I'm feeling this way, because I've examined it before. And I've, again, by journaling about it, you kind of step back and look at it objectively a little bit more. Once you get it out and it's on paper, it's not that it's completely objective, it's still subjective, but it's less subjective. I know what's happening. I can think through this now. What are the things I need to tell myself? Because I know what the feeling and the fears are saying based on the stories and beliefs born out of the trauma. And those are going to be there until I sort that shit out. But for now, to manage this in this moment, how do I know that those fears are not true? And I know what this person is saying here is, it's so frustrating to see logic work as a coping mechanism for my friends, but I don't have the dialogue to talk myself down. But I don't think it's that they are broken and unable to actually do this. And I don't think the therapist is wrong about them needing to have more compassion for themselves in that moment, because they could say, I love myself. I'm not going to let this get to me, as part of some of the, let's say, arguments that they're fighting against themselves with. But I think really what's going on here more is that they are looking for solutions that are generalized rather than specific. And so the actual thing I'm suggesting here is, and again, just to be very clear, as I prefaced last night before we did all this, when we were looking at Reddit last night too, we don't know this person's story. This is just a few paragraphs of text. I have no idea what they actually went through. You know, I am just using this as a prompt to throw out ideas to you. If you are kind of remotely going through something, if you want to ask me questions about it, that's all cool too. But I think based on the direction they're going, they're talking about generalized techniques, when really I think if they took some time to address this before it happens again, they would come up with some personal solutions that might be kind of rooted in some of where these generalized techniques come from, but it'd be specific to them, that would make the tools that much more effective and maybe help them get through it. And I'm not saying that this person might never get triggered again in the right or wrong circumstances, but if they can catch themselves a little bit sooner, if they can fight back a little bit sooner before their brain basically goes offline, then they might not find themselves running to another room to lock themselves in and to dissociate or to cry or whatever else. But again, ultimately the answer here is they're going to need to do the work either with their therapist or someone, a coach, to actually address this trauma. And that's not exactly what they're answering or what they're asking. They may be addressing that with their therapist. It may just be taking a while. Who knows? So, all right, let's see what else we have here. Yeah, we saw that guy the other night. Was I wrong? This is actually not a bad one. I'm going to open this up and we're going to read it. Because there's a few things going on here. So I work in a call center. I used to work in a call center too, and I can tell you, as an introvert, that's tough. But I was really good at it, because I'm really good at tech support. That's when I was working at Verizon, like I mentioned at the top of this. So I work in a call center thanks to a lot of childhood trauma, trigger warning, physical and sexual abuse, and trauma in adulthood, rape. I can't stand being touched unless I know you and you have my okay. Which is honestly fair, because, you know, people have a right to their physical self. And even if this person didn't have that trauma, they would have that right, by the way, to not be touched if they don't want to be. But we can obviously see why this would bother them. So at work, this guy touched me. I genuinely don't think he meant anything harmful. It was just a tap on the shoulder, and I nearly threw him 2 bays over. I didn't, but he could clearly see just how angry I was over it. Alright, so, like, it's an automatic trauma response for me to get violent if you touch me, and I don't know how to control it. Tips welcome. It's a lifelong thing at this point. I don't understand why it's a lifelong thing. Like, why? Why do people... I guess we just don't know that the solutions are actually out there. Well, it was brought up to my supervisor, who said he's just really affectionate and I needed to understand where he's coming from. What? Am I right in informing her no one should be touching me if I don't know them and they do not have my permission, or am I in the wrong? I'm confused now. No one has ever had an issue when I've told them not to touch me until that supervisor. Any other tips would be welcome. So this one is kind of a struggle, because touching someone, again, you should really have their consent and permission no matter what. However, I think most of us would agree that, like, say you were, you know, coming up behind someone, it was like, hey, can I bother you for a second? 996 out of 1,000 of us aren't going to have a reaction where you nearly punch someone and get violent over it, right? And the truth is, we can't rearrange society for this one person's trauma. That would, like, I'm not saying she should have been touched, but what needs to happen in this place, she has a right to not be touched, but she even recognizes that he didn't mean anything harmful by it. He was just trying to get her attention or something like that, right? Because, again, just a tap on the shoulder, you know, I don't know if it was to get her attention because he was coming up behind her and like, hey, sorry to bother you, or something like that. Who knows what the circumstances, but even this person recognizes that it was not a thing where this person was trying to be harmful to them, or malevolent, or malicious, or anything like that, of that nature. I don't think that the supervisor necessarily handled it properly in saying she needed to understand where he's coming from, because the supervisor also needs to understand where this person's coming from. However, if I was the supervisor, I'd say, okay, this person didn't know. We're going to sort this out. Now they're going to know going forward. Right? However, it's not really necessarily a personality thing, but if you knew that it was harmless, and you know that most of society might do that, and that you're the exception because of your own experiences, then you also need to just recognize that they didn't mean anything by it, and let it go. Like, and I say that because, and this might get me in a lot of trouble, like, again, we can't rearrange the entire world for victims. And I'm not saying it's the victim's fault, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't take them into consideration as just decent human beings. However, even when you're a victim, you have to recognize that your experience is different than everyone else's, and that you can't expect the entire world to change around you because of your of how you were victimized. That's a tough reality, but it's the truth. So now, moving forward, it's an automatic trauma response for me to get violent if you touch me. So this person had a lot of experiences where their physical autonomy was taken from them without their consent. So naturally, that is going to it might not necessarily be violent, but of course there'd be some reaction to it without it being addressed. What we really need to do, again, I'm just going to move on from the case that I'm like, well, you just need to address your fucking trauma, right? Everyone who's watching this knows by this point. Again, I would say that this, if it's the point at which you get violent, it would work to maybe do some exercises in your control to begin to have a new reaction or response, like to begin conditioning yourself to a new response that's not violent. Before I continue with that, I want to actually read what these people say. You weren't wrong at all. People should understand that you don't want to be touched without your permission. They weren't wrong for not wanting to be touched without their permission. They were maybe a little wrong for their overreaction, but everyone's allowed to be wrong and have an overreaction like that and then explain, hey, I have been through some trauma, like this is what's going on. We should be able to sit down and the other person could be like, oh my god, I didn't know, I'm sorry, I will make sure not to touch you again. Like, if we're adults in a workplace, we should be able to do that. If they do it anyway, it's their own fault and they're responsible for it. Yes, this person should never have to, now that the other person knows, the person who touched them, this person should never have to be touched by them again. And if the person does it again, then they should be held liable. It's absolutely okay to inform anyone about this. This is for your own comfort and ultimately for theirs too. They just need to suck it up. Yeah. Pretty much. Anyway, report the supervisor. Unsolicited affection on its own is grounds for sexual harassment in the workplace. Your supervisor knows this and does not want you to report future interactions. Being really affectionate is unacceptable in a professional environment, especially without consent. This sounds like someone who's being triggered with their own trauma and responding in a little bit of an overtop way. I would write to HR and say an incident where a coworker tapped me on the shoulder unexpectedly and made me physically uncomfortable and was relayed to my supervisor. Rather than let that coworker know that he should always ask before touching another coworker, which this person doesn't actually know if that happened or not, this supervisor may have talked to that person in addition to the original poster here. Before touching another coworker, she told me that he's just really affectionate and that I should accept this behavior. The supervisor, based on what they said, did not say you need to accept this. They were just asking for some understanding and saying, hey, he's just a person who, you know, was just try to understand he wasn't trying to trigger you and make you feel bad or trauma, you know? I am not mad at the coworker, but I am mad at the supervisor for insinuating that I should accept unprofessional physical exchanges at work. I guess maybe the supervisor... Again, I don't know that the supervisor totally handled it exactly right. It's a kind of a tight line to walk. If this supervisor is not in HR, they might not be perfect about walking that line. I don't know that it... And maybe they need to be talked to by HR a little bit about it, but I don't think it is grounds for like punishment by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not even gonna read the rest of this. Not wrong. A compassionate response on their end. I wasn't aware of that. Sorry, won't happen again. Right, and that's exactly what kind of should happen by that other person. Again, to get into what I think this person could do as far as tips to not deal with this in the future. Really, I think it's about they've been conditioned in a certain way that when they're touched, again, without their consent, it's that it immediately kind of, they get flooded with those feelings of when it happened in the past. So we need to have new experiences that do not involve them, like, they kind of have to have consent without it necessarily being the case where, like they say in the beginning, unless I know you and you have my okay, right? It's probably gonna need to be a thing where, you know, they start out with someone they know and they have their okay, and it's like, hey, you know, or high five, or hey, do you mind if I pat you on the shoulder, or something like that. You got to start really slow with this, because you obviously don't want to trigger someone. And again, this isn't something to necessarily just do with your friends, because you don't want to put that on your friends to have to help you heal from trauma, at least in this way. But I do think that slowly integrating more positive, harmless physical touch, just on the shoulder, on the top of the hand, a high five, a handshake, to where they're just not as triggery to this kind of thing when it is unexpected, is probably the first management direction that I'd go on it. Alright, what else do we got here? How'd this one get in here? No comments. So I guess this was like cross-posted. Are you experiencing a period of transition or uncertainty? Are you seeking connection with and fulfillment in your life? Do you want an ally to help you stay focused on what is most important? I specialize in mindful coaching to support the balance between goal and life fulfillment through a holistic approach of deep reflection and applied learning. My passion is helping others identify potential, leverage resources, honor natural motivation, and facilitate change. I am particularly interested in how we can embrace this change through emotional intelligence, somatic experience, and mindful awareness while living authentic and purpose-driven lives. I don't know that I've ever really gotten into somatic experiencing before, which is a technique to help with trauma. I am offering a 60% discount on services, and check out my website. I'm going to step out of life coach for a moment and step into internet marketer for life coaches, which I've done for the past decade, and website designer for life coaches. I know what this means, but I don't know what this means. Support the balance between goal and life fulfillment. I think what they're saying there is your professional goals, but also living like the lifestyle you want, and through a holistic approach of deep reflection and applied learning. I mean, this is kind of a bunch of bullshit that's like, through self-awareness coaching, I want to help you attain your personal and professional goals by helping you to think deeply about what you want and then applying things you learn so that you actually do it. I don't know how that's actually different than like what humans do anyway. You could just say, I'm a life coach, but that wouldn't sound as intriguing. The problem is, this is so confusing to the average person, in my opinion. I don't know why anyone would actually be like, ooh, that sounds interesting. I mean, it might sound interesting, but I don't know enough to like motivate someone. I hope this person does pretty well. I think it's great if they are passionate about helping people figure out the things they want to do and facilitate the change to get them doing the things that they want to do. That's certainly a part of what I do. As far as after we kind of sort out trauma, then it's like, okay, what do you want to do? But this somatic experiencing, this is a thing. Let's talk about this. This up on Google. So, what is an example of somatic treatment? Rather than just talk about them, somatic therapists guide patients to focus on their underlying physical sensations. From there, the mind-body exercises may include breathwork, meditation, visualization, massage, grounding, dance, and/or sensational awareness work. So, what I think of when I think of somatic experiencing, I don't necessarily think of. And Peter Levine, by the way, he wrote "Waking the Tiger." Is it? Yeah, Waking the Tiger, which I do have that book, and I've read it, and this is actually something cool to talk about on here because we've been focusing on trauma as far as it kind of being in you, and it affecting your beliefs and your stories and all that kind of stuff, and needing to work on it in a doing like actual processing of it mentally to move past it. The interesting thing is, though, that trauma is also stored in your body, right? So there's like a dual thing going on, and the direction that he takes is really emphasizing the body and how it's in the body and how it can be let out. Now, it's kind of interesting if you look at like animals who undergo some kind of trauma, like let's say you watch a recording of them. Let's say it's a gazelle that narrowly gets away from a tiger chasing them on the savannah in Africa. They will basically like lay down and just like shake. And then when that's over, they kind of take a nap, and then they get up and they move on with their life. And now, why does that work for a gazelle? And why does it kind of work for a human? Well, it works for a gazelle because they don't really have the mental processing power, and they're not going to like remember it and all that kind of stuff. So for them, it's stored in the body a lot more. But we're all mammals, and humans have this as well, although we have the additional complexity of the brain. So you have like a dual thing going on here rather than it kind of just being in the body like a gazelle would deal with. But that doesn't mean that some of the techniques that would work in the animal kingdom don't, like, they work for us as well. And so with somatic experiencing, some of the neat things you can go on. We'll read what the actual man says about this. Trauma is a fact of life. It does not have to be a life sentence. Couldn't agree with that more. What happens is you are letting out the physical stress from your body. It's essentially, and you could say, well, like exercise. Somatic experience isn't exercising, but this is why exercise is actually really good for mental health anyway, because by getting the energy, pent up energy and like charge out of your body, by exercising, you can get some relief from it. Now, I don't think this is a I don't think this is the final answer, but I do think in regards to what some of the people were asking about as far as like management of trauma and techniques like that, while they were asking for like in the moment, what do I do? How do I deal with this when like this comes up? This is something you don't do in the moment. You do this like as a practice outside of the moment to help you stay more even keel throughout the rest of your day and week or whatever else, you know, as you're going through until you actually address this stuff. And generally speaking, when I think of somatic experiencing myself, the exercises that I'm thinking about are ones that stress your muscles to the point that you shake. So if you've ever done a plank, if you've ever laid on your back and like lifted your legs up in the air and just tried to hold them, If you've ever used a exercise band, you could use a belt too as well, where you basically, like, you kind of lay on your back, and you know, a fetal position would be on your side, but kind of do it on your back, and you pull your knees in and you loop the exercise band or the belt around your feet, and then you pull as hard as you can and hold it, but then with your legs you're pushing as hard as you can, right? And it gets to the point, like, you might be struggling, but at a certain point they're gonna do this, right? You want to keep doing this for a while, and it is exhausting your muscles, and it's getting the stress out. Basically, it's essentially wearing your muscles out so that you, from the body perspective, like, if you ever see someone that's struggling and dealing not necessarily with depression, which is just kind of shoulders are slumped, but anxiety is this, right? And they're like this. So if you shake it out of your muscles, you can kind of relax yourself, right? Now, exercise, again, it can do the same thing, but not all exercises are really doing this. Because if you're weightlifting, right, you're causing basically micro tears in your muscles so that they heal back and hopefully stronger to build muscle. And there may be a time when you're lifting weight so much that you are shaking, but it's a very short time. It's not a prolonged thing. If you're doing cardio, again, you might be in like a fat burning zone, but you're not stressing your muscles to the point, generally speaking, that they might be sore and worn out if you do enough of it, but it's not like a very intense yet sustained applying of your muscles to the point that they are going to like fail, but like in a different way than failure if you're familiar with weightlifting. Like, failure in weightlifting is I tried to lift it and I couldn't, right? This is I'm engaging them so long that there's a point at which they're going to give out, right? It's not even that I couldn't lift the weight, it's that once I lifted the weight, I held it for so long that I then failed and dropped it because my muscles just could not do it any longer. Now, when we weightlift, we don't normally do that. That's not the point. We're not like holding a weight over our heads and just waiting until our arms are shaking so bad that we drop the bar and it bounces off our skull. That's not what we're trying to do. But with somatic experiencing, that's kind of the goal. So you can do things like, again, if you're struggling, the belt or exercise band technique that I just laid out before, where you loop it around your feet, works really well because you are engaging your arms and your legs at the same time. You're pulling back with your arms and they're doing this, but then your legs are pushing out and they're doing this, so you kind of have like a full body thing going on. And it doesn't have to be that intense though. If you're a little bit older, if you have been injured or something like that, it instead of actually exerting yourself with like force like that to do it, it can be as simple as, again, just laying on the ground and lifting your legs up and out and holding them, and after a while they're gonna start shaking. Like, it's gonna be hard to keep them up in the air. Yeah, it does work. There is a lot of research behind it. Waking the Tiger is a good book. It is something that is a more of a management technique. I don't think doing this for like a year suddenly means you never get triggered again or anything like that. However, it does take aim at one aspect of trauma, in that it is stored in the body, at least partially, even though you'll have the memories in your head too, so it's stored up in your memories as well. And sometimes you block it out even, so it's not even in your memories, but it's still there, kind of. But it is something that it's I would say this is another tool, and I would almost go so far as to say I'd be more interested in this kind of thing, as opposed to some of the other more just kind of logic tools out there, right? That other person... Where were we again? Let's clear the pop-up. This one, the first one. Exquisite Carrot. Is this the same one? This Exquisite Carrot, tips for differentiating trauma reaction from anxiety. I think they were the one who just posted about being touched. Am I wrong about that? Was I wrong? Akalith. Okay, never mind. Maybe I was wrong about that. Again, something... So, they were asking, like, well, in the moment, how do I not disassociate? How do I not run to a room and cry? Somatic experiencing might, in addition to the journaling, be something actually really worth looking into for them, so that they could be a little bit more even keel, right? And you can think about this in terms of just regular exercise and being pent up with energy, not necessarily traumatic stress and anxiety, but if you are let's say you haven't exercised in a week. Let's say you're used to exercising. You will feel pent up energy, and then you get out there and you go for a run for like 45 minutes. It's like, I let that out, right? And so now you're more at peace, you're more balanced throughout the day and all that kind of stuff. The same actually kind of works with somatic experiencing and in relation to trauma. So someone is asking a question anonymously. I'm gonna take a look at this real fast. So they ask, when I have breakdowns, I uncontrollably cry and shake. However, after a certain amount of time, I will suddenly just stop crying and I feel all energy leave my body and I just freeze in bed staring straight out, just silent, no thoughts, no emotions anymore, no energy to move, just nothingness. What is this? You are actually kind of doing something like an unintentional somatic experiencing. That's what we were just talking about is in fact, how it works, right? Human beings have an innate ability to overcome the effects of diverse traumas. The somatic experiencing approach facilitates the completion of self-protective motoric responses and the release of thwarted survival energy bound in the body and the nervous system, thus addressing the root cause of trauma symptoms. This is approached by gently guiding clients to develop increasing tolerance for difficult bodily sensations and suppressed emotions, building their capacity for containment and resilience. So what they're talking about there as far as the end goal is, well, as you kind of go down this road, you will be more in tune with your body and know kind of how to deal with the physical trauma responses you feel in healthy ways. Beginning in the 1970s, Peter's explorations into how animals deal with threat led to the development of the somatic experiencing method. A method that is highly effective in dealing with the effects of overwhelm on our nervous system. Somatic experiencing is a clinical methodology based on an appreciation of why animals in the wild are not traumatized by routine threats to their lives, while humans, on the other hand, are readily overwhelmed and often subject to long-lasting traumatic symptoms of hyperarousal, shutdown, and dysregulation. So, let's talk about I did kind of cover this, but I just want to read it here. Dr. Levine was inspired to study stress on the nervous system when he realized that animals in the wild are constantly under threat of death from predation, yet rarely show symptoms of trauma. He discovered that deep trauma has to do with the third survival response to perceived life threat, which is freeze and collapse. This is in regards to you and why, yes, last night and today I said fight, flight, or freeze. When fight and flight are not options, both animals in the wild and humans freeze and immobilize, like playing dead. This makes them less of a target. The freeze and collapse response is time limited. In other words, it needs to run its course and allow the massive energy that was prepared for fight or flight to discharge through spontaneous, gentle inner shaking and trembling. If the immobility phase does not complete, then that charge stays trapped, and from the body's perspective is still under threat and often continues to perceive the world from that perspective. Somatic experiencing works to release this stored energy and turn off this threat alarm that causes dysregulation and dissociation. Let's go back to the question now. I'm going to read it again. When I have breakdowns, I uncontrollably cry and shake. However, after a certain amount of time, I will suddenly just stop crying, and I feel all the energy leave my body, and I just freeze in bed, staring straight out, just silent, no thoughts, no emotions anymore, no energy to move, just nothingness. Right? The freeze and collapse response is time limited. Basically, what's happening is you're freezing and collapsing, you're crying and shaking, and your body is basically... You are basically the gazelle I just talked about like 5 minutes ago. And at that point, when it releases, then that's out of you, right? And then I talked about the fact that at that point, after that energy is released, then they usually just fall asleep for a little bit, and then they're able to get up and walk away. And so with you're just silent, you're freezing in bed. Whether you nap or not doesn't matter. It's this rest phase, and then after that, you can get up and move on with your day. Going back to what I said before about somatic experiencing, why I don't think this is the be-all, end-all, is because although what you're doing is kind of the natural way that that somatic experiencing was kind of developed around, and that there may be certain understandings and techniques if you go down the somatic experiencing road that you will what would be the word here, that what you're going through you might be able to control and manage and do at specific times, like I was just talking about before, where you would throw the thing around your feet and shake your body so that it's not happening necessarily as a breakdown, it's more of a planned thing, right? And then again, somatic experiencing is a thing, like I could go and get certified as a somatic experiencing like instructor or therapist, and like it's a discipline. It's not like throw an exercise band over your feet and that's all somatic experiencing is. There's more to it. That's just a very basic tool that, like, again, because I don't see it as the be-all, end-all, it's like, okay, that's a tool in the toolkit, and you could do that as opposed to waiting until you break down to do it. But that's ultimately what it is. That when you ask what is this is the natural, let's say, mammalian response without a prefrontal cortex and without like an advanced brain to how your body releases charge from something traumatic. And charge is a word that I like to use, and I picked that up from my mentor, and they even say here discharge. That when we're talking about the tension, the anxiety, and all that, like that's you're charged, right, from it, and your body is kind of doing what it naturally does when it's just like the lizard and animal brain, and without the human brain on top of it. This is the way that it's like kicking in and doing what our animal side has kind of known to do, as all these animals know to do as well, for millennia now, right? So that's actually kind of what's going on there. And if that's something that you recognize you already do, you could look into somatic experiencing a little bit more. I don't think you need to. You could just start with some of the things I was telling you about. Do a plank, do the legs in the air thing, do the exercise band thing around your feet. And the idea there would be that because you're doing it and kind of keeping yourself releasing that energy, and it's going to mean you maintain a more stable baseline rather than, break down and then having to come up out of it through this. It could be more like this, a little bit more steady, a little bit more stable. Again, I don't think this is the final solution. I know that if you've watched this, this stream for any amount of time, even this one that I'm doing today, but if you've watched anyone watching this has watched any of my other videos, they know where I stand on this. But this is definitely something that is what would be the word? I think it is a good tool. I think it's something I have used it in the past. I don't use it super often, and I don't really feel the need to use it anymore. I would rather just do the deeper work than the physical work, but also I try to, and again, talking about balance versus imbalance at the top of this, I try to work in physical activity into my day, even just taking a walk with this guy, but I do like to weightlift. This treadmill is not only for him, it's also for me, although he's really good at it. And so, you know, I try to be mindful already that it's important to expel physical energy from your body to keep a healthy mental state and to not have mood swings up and down and stuff like that. So being that I am really not still, again, the memories never leave, but I wouldn't say I'm like actively fighting against some of the traumas in my life, like some others watching this might be right now. This isn't something that I really need to do, but it is something regularly, I mean. But it's something that I've actually done, I want to say in the past 2 months. I think it was probably about 2 months ago. There was a very stressful thing. It wasn't traumatic, it was just a very stressful time where I was kind of at a point where things were happening in my life where it was very chaotic. There was a lot of change happening really fast. I was feeling very anxious about things. I was my personal life took a massive 180. My professional life took a massive 180. Like, all of a sudden, I was just doing things, and then like the biggest curveballs came along, and it wasn't just one. It was like, you know, two really, really giant ones, and then like a few other ones, and for a few weeks there, I was having a really hard time, just kind of, I was struggling with a few things. I was struggling with fear because, like, it's not that I'm necessarily bad at operating in chaos, but this was a significant amount of chaos that came along. You know, it'd be one thing if, I don't know. Let's say you're like, you got a job, you got a significant other or something like that, but maybe not like a wife, but just like you're dating, right? Your family's doing okay, you are in touch with them, you have a friend group and all that kind of stuff, and like, you and a friend have like a falling out, right? That's like a curveball, but everything else is kind of stable, right? So like you can navigate that chaos. But for me, it was like the two major things in my life just suddenly turned around in a way I was just not expecting, just out of the blue. And there was not a well, on the personal side, that was like, okay, I didn't expect this, but I could get through. On the professional side, it was a time period where I was, what would be the word here? I knew I needed to start doing this, which has since, I think, actually been really vindicated in a number of ways. Not just the feedback that I get from a lot of you guys and some of the other signs I'm seeing, but that other things in my life, which I don't totally want to get into right now, are all kind of like aligning with it, and like things are all kind of like working out. But I couldn't have known that, and you know, I still have like bills to pay and shit. So it's like, it's great to start a new business, but that meant spending less time and less energy getting new clients. And you know, there's a really good video that I almost want to pull up. Maybe we'll watch that at the beginning of next week's show or something like that. It's Steve Harvey talking about himself going through how he got started as a comedian. And he was basically homeless. He felt really strongly about this. He's like, every time I'd go see a comedy show, the first time he went to see a comedy show, like he knew what joke the guy was going to say next. And he just like fell in love with it, and he was trying, and he couldn't, like, parents wouldn't let him stay there or whatever. The only thing they do is allow, he had a phone line there and an answering machine, and he could call in and check his messages, right? So he at least had that going. This is like pre-cell phone days, right? And he was, it's a really interesting video, hearing him talk about his experience and how he got one break, and just this one kind of weekend, just like boom, it all worked out, and it just like went. And but he was talking at a certain point, he's like, at a certain point you have to leap, you have to have a leap of faith, you have to, if you're gonna do something like this where you're gonna follow your passion or whatever, you have to have a leap of faith. I've actually gone through this multiple times recently with this, but also when I started my web design business close to a decade ago. I was in the oil industry. I was losing my job there. I could have tried to figure out and go get another job, but I was like, no, I'm going all in on myself. I'm going to figure out how to make this work. And in that, like, just because you make the leap doesn't mean, you know, people talk about it. An entrepreneur is like jumping off a cliff and basically like building a plane on the way down. That's kind of what it is. In a sense, when you make that leap and you jump off the cliff, you bounce off the side of the cliff and take a few bumps along the way before you kind of, you know, figure it out, get the plane built, and then avoid crashing. Hopefully. Doesn't always happen that way. Anyway, point being, I was brought to this point in my life about 2 months ago where I have been I had been slowly building to working where I was coaching. I had worked with people in the past, but I wasn't really like going for it. Like, I just need a little more time. I need to get these things taken care of. I'm going to keep making a little bit more money, doing my old job and all that kind of stuff. And things just started to not work. And I was feeling so internally, I was struggling with what I was doing so much because I knew it wasn't the right thing to be doing. But I'm sitting there like, I still got bills to pay, and like, I don't know, like, it takes a while to build a business. And ultimately, in my opinion, I didn't necessarily have a choice because a few years ago, and I'll get into some of my own religious beliefs, I'm not necessarily in any denomination. I'm not Christian or anything like that, but I do believe in God, and that being in alignment with him is like super important to me. In fact, a few years ago I swore like that it would be the case that I would try to be in alignment as much as possible. I'm not going to lie, cheat, or steal, with very, 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 very limited exceptions. I don't really need to get into that, but just essentially know that if you're ever talking to me, I'm not lying to you. And that, because I believe that telling the truth leads to the best possible outcome. And so I could tell internally that what I was doing and trying to go down this other path where, you know, I as a web designer, I make pretty decent money. My projects are not like $1,000 to $2,000 projects. My consulting is expensive. It's, you know, hundreds of dollars an hour to talk to me. And so to walk away from that and go into this that plus a sudden shakeup in my personal life. Like, things got... I was kind of cruising. I was like, all right, I'm just going to keep working. I'm going to make some money, you know, keep paying bills and all that kind of stuff. And it just, like, came along and rocked me. And so I was feeling a lot of anxiety because it's like, I need to make money. I don't think that this is going to start making money immediately. In fact, I kind of know it won't. But I know this is... I gotta leap. And so at this time, I was feeling this charge and this energy, and my own mentor reminded me of this somatic experiencing exercises and was like, yeah, take an exercise band. I don't have one. I actually wound up using a belt, but I did. I took the belt, I looped it around my foot, and I just pulled, and I let some of that energy, stress, anxiety stored in the body out by letting it shake out of my muscles. So it is something that once in a while, when the situation calls for it, I actually will go ahead and use. And despite not like actively trying to work past trauma, but if you are there, it's something that you can just kind of use as a exercise. It doesn't take that long to get your muscles shaking, and kind of do it as a maintenance thing every day or every other day. When I was looking into this more and learning about it, reading the book and coming to know about somatic experiencing, there was one woman who was a mom and had like a special needs child that it was like, you're a mom for the rest of your life now, basically. Like, you need to take care of this person all day, every day. They're not capable of doing things themselves. Naturally, this is it's not necessarily traumatizing in the same way that anything with a trigger warning is, but it is in the sense that is a gigantic burden. It's stressful. It causes anxiety. And this person talked about how they work this into their day, basically, and how there'd be at a certain point the person in their care, their child, would either like take a nap or watch TV or something for a little while, and just kind of, as they were there, this person then did an exercise like where they would sit in a chair and like lift their legs out straight. And this was a person who was older, by the way. Like, they were taking their child was now not just a 5-year-old. I mean, like, they were decades into their life. I don't remember if it was like 20 or 30 or just how long, but this is someone who's essentially grandparent age, taking care of their child still. Your body can't handle the stress of maybe fighting back against an exercise band and pulling out. You might like injure yourself. So it was basically zero impact, the exercises they were doing. And it just, it was again, I'm sure there's more. You might find that video if you look on YouTube. You can go on YouTube and type in somatic experiencing and see a few people talking about it or the different exercises they do, see what works for you. Maybe there's a little bit more resistance to kind of get that energy out. What would I say? A little bit more fiercely, I guess, if you're really physically exerting yourself. But you can also totally do zero impact on yourself, but still get your muscles engaged and shaking in this way and letting out that charge and helping yourself be more even keel throughout the days and weeks. But again, it should be used in concert with some of the other things I'm talking about. And ideally, you would do it to the point where you don't have a breakdown. Not saying it would be the solution to never having them, but hopefully it would it would make it so that if you have practice with it, it's possible that you might not break down completely. You maybe go, oh, I need this, and do it more mindfully, let's say, if you understand what I'm saying, and maybe in a more positive or productive way where you are more controllably doing it. And so, having more control over your experience of doing it is also just going to help you in general, not necessarily because the end result of the physical release is any different, so much as you're going to feel more empowered, which would be a good thing. Does that answer? Do you have any other questions? You can just DM me. I'll keep an eye out. This has been fun. I didn't know I was going to get into somatic experiencing today. And all because of another life coach. That helped. Thank you. You're welcome. Yeah, check out somatic experiencing though. I would recommend it. Alright. Thank you, Actuator Salt. Let's just scroll down a little bit. Try to go... Okay, some of this stuff's a month ago. Jump past some of that other stuff that we saw before. I have like 20 minutes left on this stream, so let me try to pick a good one. Forgiveness, my favorite topic. But... I'd be interested in that one, but I don't want to pull that video up yet. I'm not sure how it's going to play, because I have the desktop audio. It's coming through because I have the music going, but it's kind of lowered, and I don't know that I really want to mess with that. I think I got it right for you guys to where the music's in the background, but I have to do a thing where I can maybe look at YouTube videos and stuff, watch it together with the stream, and then comment at another time. I want to stop using my trauma as an excuse. Good. How long is that? Oh. Yeah. We'll check that out. Let's check this one. Implied... Okay, so trigger warning. Again, if you watch this Twitch stream, you kind of have to know that the whole thing is kind of a trigger warning. And I do just try to say trigger warning and like pick your trigger, rather than like actually talking about stuff that might trigger you. But it is kind of the case. Like I just don't know how to do a stream on trauma and talk about like overcoming it without once in a while getting into actual situations and what to do. So I'm sorry if that is fucking with any of you. Hopefully you can use some of the things I'm talking about on here to get through it and get better, but we do need to talk about these things and not just always hide from the things that trigger us. The idea is to get to a point where they no longer trigger us. It's the entire point of everything I'm talking about when it comes to, as far as the trauma side of what I do, which I think a lot of people know I have a major emphasis on. I would like to get to a point where I talk about some of the stuff about achieving goals and stuff like that at another time, and as I keep going on with the stream. But I feel like really diving deep and giving people tools I think a lot of people are struggling and stuck here, right? And so this really, I kind of want to address this first over many streams before I kind of move on. And I always want to leave the door open for people to talk and ask me questions about this stuff, because I think this is the stuff that most people are most interested in hearing from me when I talk to them about stuff anyway. Most people aren't like, oh, give me tips to be more productive at work. It's like, oh, how did you overcome your trauma? Basically, I've made the decision of forgiving my dad and not cursing him every time I see him anymore, since he's not harming me the way he used to, if not at all. So we're on good terms, and we finally started talking to each other at least once every 2 days, which is good, since I'm extremely tired of having hatred in my heart and never going easy on the people around me myself. There is a lot of insight that people watching this might take away from that paragraph. If you're struggling with anything specific to other people have hurt you, and you recognize the need, this person has recognized the need to forgive. It's not necessarily that they have to have a relationship with the person. It's being extremely tired of having the hatred or the pain or the suffering in their heart, and how it comes out and hurts them and others as they try to move forward in life. It's really the case when it comes to this stuff. Only problem is, I've been having really awful intrusive thoughts about my dad that last almost forever, and then mostly come at night when I'm about to get ready for bed. I keep on envisioning him holding me as I lay there and he's smiling at me. It just freaks me out so much that I'm forced to spend a lot of time trying to distract and soothe myself. If I got ready at 2 a.m., I'd only feel safe enough to sleep at about 2:30. How would you guys deal with this? So, that's a big one. Don't know if I'm going to have 20 minutes, but we're going to see what some people say here. There is a misconception about forgiveness. You don't have to rekindle relationships with people who wronged you just because you let things go. In fact, you can forgive, let go of that anger for yourself, and set very strong boundaries with those people. This person is 100% fucking correct. For some survivors, those boundaries could even mean going no contact permanently. 100% correct. Forgiveness does not mean that what the person did is okay, that you absolve them of it, or that you are forced to continue a relationship with them, or, like, you know, accept it. You have to accept, but you don't have to accept an ongoing relationship. You decide what's best for you, but please don't confuse forgiveness with idiot compassion, allowing abusers to keep abusing you time and again. Thank you so much for your kind advice. Unfortunately, what's going on is that I'm still a minor, and I'm expecting to still live with him for a few more years. I'm not a sexual abuse survivor by any means, but I can become unstable when people talk about it. Regardless, I'm definitely thinking of going no contact or minimal contact once I'm old enough. Okay. It's interesting. Did this start after you reconnected with your dad? There may be parts of you that rightfully don't feel safe with him. Yes, we don't necessarily talk in depth, just like conversations like, do you like this movie? My mind is messed up a bit due to religious trauma and years of being a social reject. So even stuff like this makes me begin to think he's going to begin hurting me in this way next, or that I'll allow these advances. So this person is, because of other trauma, is starting to project that this might be the next thing that could happen to them if they continue to talk and connect with their father. Which is interesting, and why, again, at the top of this, both with this stream, I think I went over it, and especially the last one, we don't know these people's situations. Any advice that I give is just me kind of going, well, if this is the case, then this might work. But with all these posts, we don't know these people, we don't know the full stories, we don't know everything. This right here is a totally different thing than what was described up here. Right, so if we just start giving advice, not knowing even remotely the full story, we could be going in the wrong direction. So while these are good as prompts, and I'm just using this as a tool to discuss different techniques, again, think about your own situation, see if it applies, and all that kind of stuff. And this is why I don't necessarily want to respond to these people in the comments as we're sitting here doing the stream, aside from the time it would take, because we just don't know, and it would almost be I don't want to say unethical, but you just don't know enough to, like, say this is what you should do. I can throw ideas out there, I can talk about it a little bit and all that kind of stuff, I can respond about what the commenters are saying, but I don't want to give actual advice, more just ideas to people watching this. I definitely get that I didn't truly begin healing from trauma and getting deeper into my therapy until I completely cut contact with my dad. Your path might be different, but for me that was crucial. I would shake or feel anxious whenever I got a call from him, even though I only had to see him in person once a year and he wasn't usually being abusive on the phone. Since I've been living this way since early childhood, at least I have my college counselor to help me with this. Alright, so they're kind of having intrusive thoughts that are fears that are kind of being manufactured in their head, like this could happen. Because I've had other traumas, so, like, what's next? Is this the next thing? You know? And it's still centered around this person, though, who did other kinds of traumas to them, in the sense that, I guess, they felt that religious trauma and also, again, years of being a social reject, perhaps because the parents were strict on them about something and made them, maybe kept them away from a lot of social contact, or made them dress or act in a certain way so that they couldn't, it made it hard for them at school, things like that. So, person asks, how would you guys deal with this? How would I deal about not creating potential scenarios in your head? Let me think about this one for a second. Let's see. I don't want to just ramble off something. Let's see if I have something insightful to say about this. Because this is not even... this is not remembering things. This is just fear in general coming up. You're gonna get hurt again somehow. I think this person doesn't fully understand what forgiveness is. And it's not in the sense of what the first commenter said, which I totally agreed with this. I'm going to upvote this, because it's absolutely right. Fake internet point for that person. Forgiveness is not, this person's not hurting me anymore, so I'm gonna just put that aside and I'm gonna talk to them every 2 days, and we're going to try to build a relationship from here, and we're just going to kind of go on with it and whatnot. If you actually forgave and accepted and moved on, you wouldn't really be having these intrusive thoughts. Now, to be fair, that doesn't mean that every time we forgive, we have gotten the full picture, and that's why it's actually important to try to forgive people and go through a process of dealing with trauma, as opposed to just saying, I forgive you. Okay, all of it, even the stuff you don't even fucking remember right now, that's not good enough, right? So I think that's what this person is actually kind of operating under, that assumption, like, okay, you know what, I don't want to feel this way anymore, so I'm just gonna start, this person's not hurting me anymore, we're gonna build a new relationship from here. But they still really should be forgiving in a more, again, I'm gonna say systematic, but it doesn't even necessarily need to be systematic. It could just be a more thoughtful way of doing it. And what I mean by that is looking at the different things that happened, and forgiveness is really, again, just choosing to be free from it, accepting it and letting it go. Doesn't mean what the person did was okay, doesn't mean you have to have a relationship with them going forward, doesn't mean any of that stuff. It just means I'm not going to be held back by this. Now, that's a simplification of it. Actually doing it is a little bit harder. It's actually a lot harder than just saying that. But I think the answer, if this person has made the decision to forgive their dad, how would I deal with this? I would just actually say, based on what you're saying, it's great that you made the decision to forgive. Now you need to actually go through like a method or a workbook or something like that can help you like truly process it and let it go, so that it's not that they couldn't logically know that because that stuff happened in the past, there's the potential for it again in the future. But you shouldn't be haunted like when you're getting ready for bed, like, oh my god, I'm not safe, something is going to happen again, and you're creating fears in your mind about potential things that could happen. That's a totally different animal than being like, I just need to keep my guard up. We can go forward and have, you know, contact that's going to be okay, and I'm going to, you know, talk about the movies or whatever with you and all that kind of stuff. But I still am like mindful that you did this in the past, so something might happen in the future. Mindfulness and being aware of possibilities is different than fears and intrusive thoughts keeping you awake at night and manufacturing scenarios in your head about different ways you could be hurt going forward. Those are very different things. So that's how you know this person, even though they've made the decision to do it, it doesn't mean they've completed that work yet. And to be fair, you know, sometimes forgiveness is, ideally it would be handled all in one, but sometimes it's not, because like you can, I have forgiven someone in the past where it's like I tried to review all the things that I thought needed to be addressed, but then like 6 months or a year down the road, like some other things like, oh shit, that happened too. And so I kind of had to do some like follow-up work on it. To be fair to this person, because I don't know the full story, they may have done a bunch of work, but just haven't gotten to the follow-up work yet, which may be where they're getting plagued by some of this stuff. I don't know. We don't know, because this is very limited. I mean, based on the original post, you would have no idea that they weren't actually sexually abused, and that it's just them fearful that it's a possibility as the next way of being abused, right? Because by the initial post, it seems like that probably happened. So, yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into too much deeper than that. I think that basically sums it up. We have a few minutes left. I'm going to briefly jump over here. I want to stop using my trauma as an excuse. Shit, this is kind of long. Let me just skim this real fast before I read it all. Alright. I'm at least going to touch on one thing here, right? Hi, there's a bit of story for context. Last night I had an experience where it was so easy to talk to my roommate. I usually struggle with making conversation, but for some reason last night it was easier. I think it had something to do with the fact that he was drunk. Yes, capital D, drunk. Because I perceived his guard to be down, I had an easier time speaking with him. You think? I mean, obviously. I mean, when you know the other person is drunk off their ass, like they're not even going to really remember it, you can be a little bit more relaxed too. But an interesting thing to say about being drunk is when you're drunk, or when you're drinking alcohol for that matter, it's not that you're not aware. Like, let's say it was this person who was drunk and not the roommate that was drunk, right? Which is how I initially read it, but then when I reread it, I was like, oh, it was that the roommate was drunk. Doesn't really matter. The point I want to make about this is when you drink, it's not that you don't know the risk, it's that you just don't care, right? So people who are drunk understand what the risk is, they're just a lot more willing to do it than the people who are not drunk. So that's why do we call it liquid courage? It's not that if you're at a bar and you're a little drunk, let's say you're a guy and you want to approach a girl and get her number. It's not that you aren't aware that rejection is a possibility if you're drunk, it's that you just don't care as much. And I remember actually a few years ago, as I was dealing with stuff with my ex and I was trying to drum up some business, she actually started to try to cold call people, which is brutally difficult if you're an introvert, trust me. And she basically did a few shots beforehand just to start doing it, because it was like, it's not that she didn't understand the risk, it's just alcohol made her not care as much when she started doing it. So it does work in that sense. But I don't think his guard is ever up the way that I believe it is. I think that's my trauma talking and trying to keep me from interrupting someone's day, even though he's sitting outside with me outside with me with the intent to have a conversation. I often find myself in situations where my roommates and I, we've all lived together for about 7 months, we're sitting outside. They've each started a conversation that has ended, and so far as I can tell, it's my turn, but I blank out every time. I get really self-conscious about it because I see it as a failing, and I relate it back to my traumatic child and teen years where I was preoccupied with surviving instead of practicing socializing. I feel shame for not being able to speak with my roommates easily, and I want so badly to communicate on that shoot the breeze level. But I don't know how, and I'm scared to learn because I don't want to appear like I'm even more of a fool. This is the key right here. So I've thought maybe, and I was thinking this before they even said it, but they already gave it away. They know what the problem is. So I've thought maybe I could explain this, and I don't have much experience with positive social relationships, and maybe that would buy some leeway, but I don't want to tie my trauma to my efforts to learn in the present. So I feel preoccupied with memories of trauma, how you manage them, and I know me telling myself, you're having trouble communicating because trauma isn't helping. Has anyone been in a similar space before? There's no shame in establishing such a tie. If you feel the need to explain your shortcomings, might as well be honest about the reasons. Don't let the explanation of your past be an excuse to stop you from trying. There's a difference between excusing your inexperience as a way to let yourself get started in a supportive environment and excusing yourself from trying to improve. This person basically nailed it. Thank you for the distinction. That's exactly what I need to remind myself of. The thing is, because I've been here too, it's less about the trauma and more that you are in the head and afraid of looking or feeling like a fool or stupid, and the shame that will come from that, and that people won't like you because you fucked up somehow. If you're not perfect, basically, then you'll be judged as bad, right? And so you put this incredible stress and pressure on yourself. And this person, if you kind of want to boil it down, has performance anxiety of sitting with friends and speaking up and talking. Like, you can just think of it that way. And so one thing I've done a few times back when, like way back, I would just be like, yeah, I'm kind of quiet and not super great at throwing out ideas or coming up with something to say or something. Just bear with me. Just, you can at least do that and say, this is just a struggle for me and I'm working on it. But this person, Shade of Echoes, again, let's give them a fake internet point. Bing. There's a difference between excusing your inexperience and using it as an excuse to not do it. I'm sure all the roommates after 7 months and you're all chilling outside and stuff, first off, they know that you never speak up. So if you just say, hey, here's why, they'll be like, oh, okay, cool. It's not that you don't like us. It'd probably make things better. And then, who knows? They could maybe help you along or be a little bit more understanding. And if you try and kind of stumble, the ultimate answer for me, by the way, because I don't feel I still stumble sometimes. Like, I remember when I first started streaming in one of the first 2 or 3 of these, I stumbled over a word real fast. Was just accepting that I'm human. And at no point will I ever be perfect. And I'm always gonna fuck up. And the answer to fucking up less is not worrying about it. Because when you worry about it, you're focused on it. And when you're focused on it, you're thinking about doing it. And that's when you fuck up. Because what you're thinking about is what you actually kind of wind up doing more often than not. Whereas if you're like, this is no big deal, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna hop on here, I'm gonna start streaming, it's whatever, I got this, you don't really fuck up. So at a certain point, this person is going to need to gain some competence by talking to their friends, hanging out, and going, this is no big deal. I'm just going to start talking. If I fuck up, I fuck up. But it's not a big deal because these are all friends. So, whatever. I'm just going to go. This is not a thing. And when you make it not a thing, it becomes not a thing. I know that's actually, really simplistic, but it's the truth. This person right here talks about perfectionism, and that is kind of the root of this. The thing is, as you're starting something new, you have to be willing to fuck up. You have to be willing to look imperfect. You're never going to get anywhere if you think, oh, I have to be perfect no matter what. When I start stuff, you're just stunting yourself because you will never try to do anything new because you can't allow yourself to fail. You have to be allowed to fail. You have to be comfortable with failure. Now, in the Silicon Valley world, they took this idea to the extreme. It's like, yeah, fail harder, fail better, fail faster. We want people to fail so they can move on and get to the right thing. And it's like, there's a difference between accepting that failure is something along the way and actually like celebrating it and like, yeah, let's try to fail and that. And I don't know that that's the right necessarily the right approach. But I think you have to get okay with being imperfect. I don't think this is really helpful. The fear of people has exact causes created by important people you trust in your life and is holding you back, so it's not an excuse. Okay, I know what they're trying to say. It could be not an excuse, but a reason nonetheless, and that doesn't solve the problem. It maybe helps them feel a little bit better. I definitely am a perfectionist, so thank you for the reminder to be patient. When I called out that I don't want to appear like I'm looking like a fool, I knew that was the issue. They knew it was the issue. I knew it was the issue before they said it, because I've been there before. But it's a perfectionism issue. It's not actually trauma. It can be related to the trauma because your trauma makes you feel shame and bad or not perfect. So you try to then become a perfectionist, someone who is good. You're trying to convince yourself you're good rather than bad. You're trying to not let people see that you were hurt or damaged or sad or anything like this and put on this perfect face. But the problem is you're putting on such a fake, I need to be perfect. Maybe even the need to be perfect isn't fake necessarily, but you're trying to portray an image so hard and so badly that you're so caught up in it that you are then, when a time comes and you have to do something new that you don't feel comfortable in, you can't even do it because you're so afraid of falling on your face. That's ultimately what this person's problem is. Cool. I think, again, I think based on everything we said there, that's exactly where I would go based on their responses in the comments. It seems to be the case. So if you are struggling with that kind of thing, cut yourself some fucking slack. You're human, not a robot. Even robots are imperfect. Have compassion for yourself. Know that once in a while you're going to flub a sentence and it doesn't make you a bad person. Know that you're going to make a mistake here and there. It's inevitable. You're imperfect. You're fallible. You're human. It is what it is. I know that can be easier said than done, but truly, you have to be more compassionate with yourself. And this goes back to a practice I talked about way in some of the first few streams. The book Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It by Kamal Ravikant, where he talks about the practice of just repeating a mantra, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself. That actually, when I think back about it a little bit, helped me to be more accepting and compassionate towards myself of being imperfect, actually. It's complicated and complex. These things interweave and interconnect. So certainly when they say I want to stop using trauma as an excuse, the trauma could be connected to the need to be perfect. It certainly was on a certain level for me. But it doesn't mean that it's an exact direct connection and that's all it is. And it can be addressed in other ways. And while you might be working on your trauma, you can just be working on being more compassionate to yourself and more accepting of the fact that you're human, that you're fallible, that everyone, when they're new at something, is new and going to fail and mess up. And it's just, it is what it is. And it doesn't mean that you're less than. It doesn't mean you're not worthy. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It doesn't mean any of these things. It just means that you're human. So that is the direction I have taken in the past. If you're struggling with that, that'd be something worth considering. All right, I think that just about does it for today. I am going to take a quick break after this before I move on to some other work. And I hope that everyone has, well, everyone in America, if you do the Thanksgiving thing, I hope you all have a wonderful holiday. Enjoy a lot of good food and fun, and give thanks and have gratitude for all your blessings. And I hope that it's the case that you and yours all have a wonderful day, a wonderful weekend. I will be back possibly before next Tuesday, but if I do, it's going to be gaming. Maybe I'll stream MMM again. And yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day and a holiday weekend. And if you're not in America, I hope you have a not terrible rest of your normal week and a good weekend. So, take care, everyone. As always, thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Now, if you could, follow me. If you don't already follow me, that would really help me on Twitch right now. Join the Discord. All the links are somewhere here on this Twitch page. Probably down below. Yeah, I'll end here. Thank you so much, everyone.